The oldest human DNA ever found belongs to no one living today. The oldest human DNA ever discovered does not belong to Europeans, Egyptians, Neanderthals, or even any civilization people usually talk about in history documentaries. It belongs to a group of humans that completely vanished from Earth. No descendants, no surviving tribe, nothing. Scientists pulled this DNA out of dirt and bone fragments so ancient that it almost sounds impossible, and what they found is honestly disturbing in the best way possible, because it changes the entire story of where humans came from. Imagine realizing history is not a straight line, but a giant graveyard filled with forgotten human species that lived, fought, survived ice ages, and then disappeared so completely that nobody even knew they existed until modern laboratories started digging through caves. And the weirdest part is, this is not ancient mythology or some internet conspiracy. Once you hear where this DNA was found and what it revealed about humanity, you start looking at human history very differently. Denisova Cave. Hidden deep in Siberia, surrounded by freezing mountains and brutal winters, there is a cave that completely destroyed what scientists thought they knew about human evolution. At first glance, it does not even look special. Just rocks, darkness, snow, and silence. But inside, that cave researchers discovered tiny bone fragments and ancient DNA belonging to a mysterious human group now called the Denisovans. The scary part is scientists still barely know what Denisovans even looked like, because most of the evidence comes from tiny fragments smaller than a credit card. Imagine an entire branch of humanity being discovered from pieces so small most people would throw them away without noticing. That is how fragile human history really is. One broken bone changed textbooks around the world. And here is where things get unsettling. The DNA older than expected. Scientists originally thought ancient DNA could not survive very long because time destroys everything. Heat, moisture, bacteria, all of it slowly erases genetic material until nothing remains. But then researchers started pulling DNA from remains over 300,000 years old, and suddenly the limits of science changed overnight. Some of the oldest DNA ever recovered was preserved because of freezing temperatures, and it allowed scientists to look directly into a past nobody thought could still speak. That is the terrifying beauty of DNA. Even after flesh disappears and civilizations turn to dust, tiny molecular traces can still whisper stories from another world. And those stories are not always comforting, because the deeper scientists dig into human history, the stranger it becomes. A human species nobody knew existed. The craziest part about Denisovans is that scientists discovered them through DNA before fully understanding their bodies. Think about that for a second. Usually, ancient humans are discovered through skulls, skeletons, weapons, or giant archaeological sites. But Denisovans were basically identified through genetics first, almost like detectives finding fingerprints from a person nobody had ever seen before. That is how advanced genetic science has become. Researchers analyzed a tiny finger bone from Denisova Cave and realized it belonged to a completely unknown human population. Imagine spending decades believing humanity's family tree was mostly understood. Then suddenly, a random bone fragment rewrites the entire thing. The mystery of extinction. What happened to the Denisovans is still one of the biggest unanswered questions in human history. There was no giant final battle, no written record, no dramatic ending anyone witnessed. They simply vanished. One possibility is climate change. Ancient Earth went through brutal environmental shifts, massive ice ages, changing ecosystems, and food shortages that wiped out countless species. Another theory suggests competition with modern humans played a role. And honestly, that possibility feels unsettling because humans have a long history of outcompeting almost everything around them. Whether intentionally or not, modern humans spread across continents while other human species slowly disappeared. Scientists pulled DNA from dirt. This sounds fake until you realize it actually happened. Researchers discovered that ancient soil can preserve human DNA even when no bones remain. That means caves and archaeological sites literally contain genetic traces left behind by humans who walked there thousands of years ago. Scientists can now analyze dirt and identify which human species occupied certain locations. That is almost science fiction levels of technology. Imagine future generations being able to reconstruct parts of modern civilization from microscopic traces left inside buildings and streets long after humanity disappears. The fact that ancient dirt can preserve DNA also means researchers may uncover even more unknown human groups in the future. The creepiest part of human evolution. Maybe the strangest thing about all this is realizing how temporary every civilization really is. Denisovans survived for thousands of years. Neanderthals survived for hundreds of thousands of years. Entire human species adapted, hunted, created tools, raised children, and survived impossible environments, yet eventually they vanished so completely that modern humans forgot they ever existed. That is humbling in a way most people never think about. Modern civilization feels permanent because people are surrounded by technology, skyscrapers, and endless information every day. But history keeps showing that survival is never guaranteed forever. One day, future beings might study humanity the same way scientists study extinct humans today, trying to piece together who we were from tiny fragments left behind. The future of ancient DNA research. Scientists believe discoveries over the next decade could completely transform the understanding of human evolution again. Technology keeps improving fast enough that researchers can recover older and older DNA samples once thought impossible to analyze. Some experts even think scientists may eventually identify human groups that left almost no physical remains behind at all. Just imagine that for a second. Entire human species hidden in history, rediscovered through microscopic traces invisible to the naked eye. It sounds unreal, but so did Denisovans before they were discovered. That is why ancient DNA research has become one of the most exciting scientific fields in the world. Humanity still does not know its full story. The deeper scientists look into ancient DNA, the more obvious it becomes that humanity barely understands its own origins. The story people grow up hearing is usually simplified because the real version is complicated, chaotic, and constantly evolving. Ancient humans migrated across impossible environments, survived extinction events, mixed with other species, and left behind genetic clues hidden for hundreds of thousands of years. Some of those clues survived in frozen caves, some survived in dirt, some survived inside modern humans themselves. And there are probably discoveries waiting underground right now that could completely change the timeline again. That is what makes this topic feel bigger than ordinary history, because it is not just about bones or archaeology. It is about identity. It is about realizing humanity is part of a much stranger story than most people ever imagined. If this video changed the way you see human history, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications because there are still countless mysteries buried beneath the surface of this planet. And some of them are far stranger than fiction.